And so why not go ahead and welcome you all to our back to school version of our subcommittee meeting. So the FAC, Acquisition Workforce. And looking forward to, I did miss the last meeting, but I understand you all had a really good discussion with our GSA colleagues on the technology tools that we're using. Just for introduction, so I'm Boris Arratia, the designated federal officer for the FAC. And we're going to be diving into our Acquisition Workforce Subcommittee discussions in a bit here. Before I do that, let me do a quick roll call and just looking at the members here. We got 3 members, not a quorum. We're not making any big decisions today, which is a good thing. But we have Nicole, Ann, and David. I think those are the 3 members that are here, and we're waiting for a couple others. I see Mark, in fact, as we speak, is just joining the meeting. So we also have Mark. Great. And I just want to go ahead and turn it over to Nicole and to kind of get us started as I go over the game plan for today. So good to be back. Back to you, Nicole.
Absolutely. So Bowen, Denise, and Brittany, thank you again for joining us today. This is a really important meeting for us. A month ago, when we hosted our last public meeting, we talked with individuals within GSA who are at the end of the acquisition lifecycle process and thinking about the environmental shopping aisle and how individuals on the front line make decisions. Today, we are talking with you all at the earlier stage of the acquisition lifecycle with a focus on category management. Both are really important parts of this broader puzzle that we're trying to consider as we embed sustainability into the federal acquisition workforce, and as we consider connectivity with policy and practice as well. So I just want to begin again by welcoming you all, and I'd like to pass the baton to Ann to offer any additional words about today.
Thank you. And at just this point, my dog has chosen to bark nonstop, so I apologize. Well, thank you. Thank you all for taking time out to speak with us today and letting us sort of interview you. I'll be wearing a couple hats today. One is co-chair of this subcommittee, but also, let's see, about 10 years ago, I was the administrator of Office of Federal Procurement Policy. And one of the first policy memos we launched was category management. So I guess you'd call me the grandmother of category management at this point.
Let's say that.
And so I'm so excited to see how much you guys have accomplished in this space. And we got little snippets of the great work that you guys are doing and thinking through around sustainability and category management and some of your work around best-in-class contracts. So, even if you haven't made as much headway as you want, even if there are ideas that you have that you've started to think through, we'd love to hear it and just pick your brain a little bit during this session. So thank you guys again.
Great.
All right, Nicole, why don't you, if you want to tee off the first set of questions and I'll jump in.
Absolutely. So we're going to start off really broad, and I believe that Boris sent you some of our draft questions. If they've changed only just marginally to focus here.
Yes. Nicole, if I could suggest, can we have our guests introduce themselves just so we know their organization? So one thing about, we've been at it for almost a year, and GSA is a really complex organization. There's just a lot of parts, and so I've been in the agency for many years, so it'd probably be good to have you all kind of introduce yourselves and kind of give us before we get into the conversation.
Great suggestion.
Boris, you're always good at keeping us straight. So
no worries.
100%.
So I'm going to start with Bowen. Go ahead, introduce yourself here.
Hey, thank you, Boris. I appreciate it, and it's my immense pleasure to meet my grandmother here.
Oh my gosh.
That's what a thought. But Ann, I think what you have actually let loose is something that's really paid off in spades. And truthfully, as we first started down that path, we're looking at how we are going to be able to extract value from our acquisitions by doing things smarter, et cetera, et cetera. However, one of the I think one of the most underappreciated value adds is the fact that we can reach out and talk to 10 categories,
Right.
one individual person in each category,
Right.
and all of a sudden turn on a dime and say, hey, can you all go through your channels and tell us about X? And
Right.
we've done that a few times now. One was when we had supply chain issues rearing up, and we sent the clarion call out to all the categories. Let us know what the issues that are developing right now, so we can talk about them and work through them and have a plan of action as we move forward.
Yeah.
So that really doesn't get talked about too much, really, to be able to do that. And we've actually found that, particularly these last couple of years, with the focus on administration priorities that are evolving, that we're able to actually get into the categories and ask them to, let's dig in on and actually have you add initiatives within your category, within your work that's going to be coming up in the next 12 months around these administration priorities, and make sure that they're digging in and actually working with solutions as well. And you mentioned the best in class, and we hold them to a different standard as well, which is that we expect them to be able to pivot to any type of external stimuli, whether it is policy, or it could be, an external disruptor like COVID, certainly, or any other market conditions that are evolving that perhaps might be category specific. But those are the types of things that we are able to share among each other. And even if they don't resonate with an individual category, there is learning all around by actually sitting in and having audience with their peers of other categories. So thank you so much. I think that there's a lot there that we want to, that we can still build off. Okay.
I think, Bowen, you run the program management organization, the PMO group within GSA, but you essentially are the team that kind of manages category management on behalf of the federal government. And I remember when GSA talked about creating a team, and I thought, like, this team is so critical to the success. You guys are sort of the lifeline for all the category leads. And I know majority of the category leads, I'm assuming, are still within GSA, but your team plays such an important role. So thank you.
Oh, of course. And just for clarity, I'm actually the category engagement lead for the PMO. We also, Brian Isbrandt is actually our director. Kelly Sechrist is his second in this area, and she actually takes care of the agency side. So we get it from both sides. We're actually encouraging agencies and we're going through this process right now for them to be able to craft their plans. We're working with the categories right now to craft their plans. And, when we were doing this 3, 4, 5 years ago, they probably didn't talk with each other as much. There really wasn't that much, as much integration as there is today. And we hope for more. But thank you very much. I do think that the role is critical, but I think that the payoff really is in getting the categories. And I think we have a couple represented here with facilities construction and IT today to really be the bellwethers of reaching out to their customers and to understand their markets and be able to share from a government-wide scope. You mentioned that GSA has, and we have 6, I think we have 6 of the 10 have category managers within GSA, but we do certainly emphasize that it's a government-wide scope of an initiative and that we need all hands on deck for the success of this.
Hey, Bowen.
Yes.
Appreciate. I wanted to go to the other guests here, and then we definitely want to get back to you and expose just to do.
Thank you for cutting me off, Boris. I appreciate it.
No worries. my facilitator hat. So Kelly, welcome to our meeting. Would you mind introducing yourself real quick for the group?
Sure. I'll come off camera for a sec since I won't be able to be here the whole time. But I'm Kelly Sechrist, and I've worked with I see lots of faces here that I've seen in former lives. So it's good to see some of you guys. It's been years for some. And like Bowen said, I'm the agency engagement lead for the PMO. So when the PMO first kicked off, and you may remember, there actually wasn't, we weren't really organized that way. It was really all about hallways at the time.
right,
Denise, you know
right.
this. It was hallways and it was categories, which is still critical. We are still categories. We are less hallways, and we are really, the agencies have really gotten in the game now. So
Great.
yeah.
Great.
So this is the topic that we're talking about here is certainly top of mind for the agencies, just like it is the categories. So that's my role.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Kelly. So I'm going to go to Denise and then Brittany. Denise, you introduce yourself.
Hello, thank you all for having me. I'm Denise Ellsburn. I actually reside in Kansas City. I wear kind of the deputy category manager hat for facilities and construction. Mary Rui serves as the facilities and construction manager. So I have been pretty much with Mary since the inception of the facilities and construction category. So I have a lot of knowledge and experience, and I remember when it was kicked off, and you know,
Totally. I'm so happy you guys are still running it.
Yeah, I've been around a long time, but you know, the FSSIs and the migration and those. So, you know, facilities and construction is the largest. So we really try to move forward and really engage the agencies.
Thank you so much, Denise. Brittany, how about you, if you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, yeah, absolutely. So good afternoon, and I'm really happy to be on the line. I don't really know much about exactly what the initiative is doing, but I do have my hand and stake into sustainability. But a little bit about me. Again, my name is Brittany Chapman. I'm a part of the IT category. I'm a program and management analyst, so I fall directly under Warren. And more specifically, my role is an IT big manager. So basically anything regarding facilitating the IT best-in-class solutions, all 13 of those. That's kind of my role, just making sure, of course, you know, those initiatives and projects align with our strategy goals. With respect to sustainability for the IT category, I know that we'll get into this a little later, but I did kind of lead that effort, just making sure that all of our bigs were compliant across the board with regards to the sustainability, big and far sustainability requirements. So great to be here. I look forward to a continued conversation. Again, I know that Warren and Ping are going to be joining in about 10 minutes. So yeah, I look forward to answering what I can, and thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Nicole. I hand the baton back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We have an ambitious list of questions that we're hoping to touch on at least one way or another. I'm going to start off really broad in the area of category management. To ask you more generally, how can category management drive sustainability? How are you thinking about this? So both what's underway within your team or elsewhere, and additional things that you might think may be done differently than what's happening today.
So
Go ahead.
I think first, Nicole, is everyone on the call very familiar with category management from the, I'm certainly Ann is, but the other members of the subcommittee?
I would say as a quick level setting would be useful.
Okay, all right. So
never mind.
Okay, so with that, there are a couple of key category management principles that are really in play here. First is that we do create, as I mentioned before, annual agency and category plans. So that's one tool that we will use to essentially execute upon category management. And the other one that we've mentioned here in the first 15 minutes was the attention to administration priorities. So in and of itself, sustainability is not germane for us. Because it is a administration priority, all of a sudden, what we have as our challenge is to ensure that the support for that administration priority is flows through every single category. And we do that certainly a couple ways. One is that we want to facilitate, and I know that Holly came and spoke with you all, I believe, Holly Elwood earlier. And what's happened is that when agencies or external agencies that want to reach out to the acquisition workforce writ large, they will come to us, because we have that quick tap on the shoulder to 10 categories covering all the common spend areas. So the fact that we exist at all is actually one of the beneficial things for sustainability. Sustainability captured in the executive orders, certainly we challenge all of the categories to support that executive order, and not just by responding reactively to that sustainability check initiative, which we certainly have done, and that's actually captured in the President's management agenda as well, but also to be creative and to use their initiatives that they plan to execute on during the next fiscal year to show support for that. And in that regard, I will be happy to turn that over to Denise so she could, because she has a couple of great examples of exactly how they're doing that. But really, that's it. We're kind of the pinch point there so that we can cascade out that message about sustainability to all the categories.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Bowen. Denise, you were called out here. So
Yeah.
how do you think category
So-
management can drive sustainability?
So from the category management perspective, under the facilities and construction, we're touching a lot of different things. And in that realm, there's a lot of new technologies that are coming out, like decarbonization concrete. And when we bring in guest speakers and individuals to educate those individuals from the agencies so that they know. And we've done a lot of work making sure that the individuals on the category team and in the acquisition workforce knows about the sustainable facilities tool, which allows those contracting professionals, whether they're program managers, facility managers, understanding all of the tools that are available to incorporate, energy efficient lighting. There's just numerous things. So facilitating that across all the agencies to help them better manage and drive that change throughout the organization. We also have initiatives. One this year is the photovoltaic maintenance, which photovoltaic arrays or solar panels. Under the President's agenda, there's a lot about solar energy and how solar energy will help us move forward in the future. We have hosted individuals to come and educate the category, category individuals, all the agencies about where solar panels are made, the challenges, how to maintain them. We're developing a template that federal agencies can use, whether it's for the maintenance of one array or many arrays. We have collaborated with industry, as well as the federal agencies and Department of Energy and FEP as well. So there is a lot of collaboration going on at the higher levels at the category level, and then driving that down through the agencies. We've had teams that talked about energy consumption and utilities over the time. There's many, I'm not going to go into all of them, but driving that down and leveraging each other's knowledge. We've had the Air Force reach out and say, oh, Navy, you did that. Let's get together. And then we'll pull a meeting together. And then GSA, PBS will come on and say, oh, I want to be a part of that meeting. And then the Army will. And then we'll facilitate a meeting. We're not subject matter experts. We'll pull the meeting invite together and let them share, take notes, and then migrate that out to the other, maybe not as predominant agencies within the facilities and construction category. Those are just a few ways that we drive sustainability within facilities and construction.
Can I follow up on one point, Denise? So I'm hearing a couple of things: education, collaboration, you're a convener.
Yes.
One thing that you did say was you developed a template for agencies to use. Can you put a little bit more context around what that looks like more generally?
Okay, so that was one of our initiatives this year. And actually Thursday, we have another industry day. So one of the initiatives is it will be an acquisition template for a contracting officer to utilize if they have solar arrays. that they need maintenance on. And we collaborated with FEMP and DOE in Lawrence, Berkeley, because apparently it's very technical in nature and the details are just way down there. So at the end of this fiscal year, we'll have out on the gateway and different other avenues to train how to use the template, or agencies can pull it and use it. We've heard that USDA and Forest Service have a lot of photovoltaic arrays and maintaining them. Many of them were put in under the ARRA money way back when, and they have about a 30-year life cycle, but they have to be maintained. And some of them are moving into that arena. So we heard there was a need, and we had some agencies that wanted to participate and work on that. So we've been working on that pretty much the entire this fiscal year as an initiative to develop a package that contracting professionals can use.
And David, I see your hand up. I just have a quick follow-up, Denise. What does the template do? I know it relates to maintenance, but what does it do for the people on the front line?
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. It just outlines the steps to think about, like what the torque looks like, how you should maintain, how you shouldn't walk across the panels, how high the vegetation should be cut, and the different components of.
So they're like maintenance guidelines.
Maintenance guidelines, yes. And
Are they putting this in their solicitations or just?
It could be used as a solicitation, yes.
I see.
Yeah, so it'll be a
Nicole,
template that they can use. Yes.
I think the one word you used that was very, that I picked up on was convener. And very, very accurate word. I think that one of the benefits is being able to, especially when it's done, when that convening is done, in anticipation of work, that you have an opportunity to level set on requirements at an appropriate time. I mean, we're seeing right now in other areas of the acquisition and other categories entirely, where the differences in requirements are exasperating and trying to get alignment on requirements after the cow's out of the barn and all agencies have gone out and done their own thing. That's very, very difficult. So I think this is actually going to be a win in terms of efficiency all around for any agencies that either have templates, have the photovoltaic arrays, or intend to purchase. It's definitely going to make things more efficient.
I think David had a question
to jump in.
Yeah, this question is for any of you, Bowen, maybe you're the best, but Denise, any of you guys who can answer it. But are you currently doing a supplier assessment, a supplier sustainability assessment? All suppliers are not created equal. Some are very much moving down this path of sustainability. Others they're in different places within their journey. But to inform your acquisition folks with respect to how each supplier should be treated in this space, one approach is to do an assessment. And I'm wondering if you're doing a supplier sustainability assessment at all. And this, by the way, would incorporate not just would incorporate how they're buying, would incorporate cultural issues, where they've put it on the in terms of where it is on the burner with respect to their corporate policy and mission. Like these are, let's consider a number of different things, but are you guys doing that as a matter of course?
So not as a matter of course. I think that that question probably is better directed to each individual category. And I'll speak, and Tim Burke would throw his hands up. He would love to be in this conversation. He is the category manager for travel. And in terms of supplier sustainability, you know, I think that the work with the travel industry is top of mind sometimes in terms of that area. And I know that they are actually working on their next version of ETS, which is the how they're going to be able to capture, and they've said this to me, that their intent is to ensure that they are able to capture more information about all elements of their purchasing and opportunities. So I guess that is perhaps a crack of a door to that sustainability.
Let me just say, and this is, I'm sure everybody understands this, but when it comes to sustainability and supply chain, it is not just about your supplier, but it's about your supplier's suppliers and the full supply chain. So what the assessment can help with is to identify how suppliers are dealing with their suppliers all the way down to the raw material level on, how they're capturing emissions, the various elements of sustainability. So didn't know if you were doing it. There are some best-in-class companies that are starting that, and that may be something that we can glean from them to maybe be used in the federal government.
So what we can certainly do is we can, as I said, we can probably reach out to those categories and see, and actually we'll find out actually in a couple of weeks here as they develop their category plans for FY24, if something like that or a kernel of that is going to manifest in one of their initiatives.
Right.
And we can certainly put a bug in there too about, hey, have you considered?
Got it. Thank you.
Brittany and Kelly, I'm going to create some space for you to jump in. What do you see as the real opportunities here to leverage category management to advance sustainability?
Well, actually, Warren, the PM is on the line, so I'm going to let him take that one away, but thank you.
Okay.
Welcome, Warren.
Welcome, Warren.
Jump right in.
Oh my God, I just can't, and I just literally came on from another meeting. Can you repeat that again?
Absolutely. Warren,
Okay.
we're asking the different folks here from their perspective, what are the real opportunities to leverage category management to advance sustainability within GSA? And this is really an open-ended question about what do you see? And I'll bring Kelly in here too. What do you see as the real opportunities for this? What levers present the greatest promise right now?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
I was just going to give you hey, Warren, I was going to give you a
sorry.
chance to breathe, and then I would answer, and then you could pile on.
Okay.
So, because I will speak sort of globally, I think that the opportunity is really presented by a function of what category management is. The function of organizing in specific areas of spend, which have unique buying needs and buying patterns and supply pools and just unique requirements, et cetera. So being able to, the government, for really the first time with category management, being able to look at those different areas in that fashion and have a team that is led to be able to look at different types of things, sustainability obviously being a major one, and being able to look at it with that lens, which really wasn't possible before. So I think that the opportunity with category management is to take advantage of the categories and to really use that as an opportunity to take the broad category and then look in that lane of sustainability and see where the opportunities lie. So with that,
can you take that a level down? So what are you doing in the IT category to drive sustainability?
So what we've been doing, the principal thing that we've been doing is we've had an initiative going on for the last 9 years, kind of when category management came into fruition, which is the government-wide strategic solutions for desktops and laptops. So we started that, and I think you were around for that.
I was, yeah.
So, yeah.
And
so,
hi, Warren.
yeah. So remember, Kay and I were the GSA representatives, Kay Ely at the time. So we started in 2013 is when the team came together with a cross section of other agency representatives. And so what we were looking at then, of course, was the proliferation of contracts throughout the government. And I think at the time, data and market research showed that there were over 3,000 different contracts for desktops and laptops, which was just really not the way to go. So we predated category management a little bit, but the team came together between 2013 and 2015 to assemble four primary agencies that were going to carry the torch for this. So it was GSA, NASA SOUP, NIH, NITAC, and Army Chess. So in doing that, what we try to do was mitigate the disparity between all of those, like creating all of those vehicles. But then also we looked at pricing and terms and conditions. And we try to look at making all of those consistent across the board for all the 24 CFO Act agencies. So in doing that, as part of the cadre of terms and conditions, of course, because we were dealing with products, then sustainability was one of those that stuck out. So with that, we principally looked at FAR Part 23, which currently houses all of the policy for sustainability. We also, I think Bowen might have mentioned this before I came on, we were looking at, as of the last couple of years, of course, Executive Order 14057. And then also we're also looking at or tracking to a couple of FAR cases that are still in process. One of those is 2021-016, which is minimizing the risk of climate change in federal acquisitions. And the other is 2021-015, disclosure of greenhouse gas emissions and climate-related financial risk. So essentially what we've been doing, so primarily we have our GSS team that is all over sustainability for that particular piece. But what we're doing more at the category level is ensuring that all of our IT best-in-class vehicles have the proper clauses, provisions, and language to meet all of the sustainability demands, to meet the FAR as well as EPA.
So
Makes sense.
you have forecasted the next question, Warren, and this relates to best-of-class contracts. We're really curious about what those efforts look like to embed sustainability requirements into best-of-class contracts and/or solicitations. So you talked about including clauses.
Mm-hmm.
So is it a case that you all are considering requiring those clauses? What's the conversation right now?
So what we've done, and I think what the other 9 categories were tasked with, and I believe Bowen might have addressed this. I know I came on late, but there's been an effort for the majority of this fiscal year to have, across all 10 categories, to have all of our all of our best-in-class vehicles upgraded to support sustainability and to make sure that all the required clauses are included in those. So what we've done, we have 13 best-in-class IT vehicles. So we've been working with them throughout this whole fiscal year to ensure that they embedded all of those clauses. I believe there were like 24 or 25 in total. And so I believe all of our vehicles have met the sustainability requirements except 3. So we're just waiting on a response from EPA to validate those last 3. But I think over the next couple of months, we'll get an answer from them. I think we changed POCs, so that's the holdup. But probably by October, we should be looking at our whole suite of IT vehicles having met the sustainability requirements for EPA.
And before we open it up to the rest of the group, I want to follow up on this specifically. What sort of technologies are you using to help with ensuring that those clauses are embedded, or is this a manual process?
It's manual.
Okay. All right, we're going to circle back around to that a little later.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is so it's partially manual. It depends on the vehicle and it depends on the agency, because as you know, some agencies have contract writing systems, some don't. And so depending on the contract writing system, it could be automated from end to end in terms of upgrading the solicitations. If they don't have specific contract writing system, then it's a manual process.
And that manual process is reading through the contract to A, see if the provisions are in, and then B, are they talking to the suppliers and modifying the contract? Like what are the practical steps?
So they'll look. So what we've been doing is talking to a lot of their program offices to go back and look at the requirements that are in their current solicitations or contracts to ensure that those specific sustainability clauses meet the standards of those. And then once they determine that they do, they will then make the determination to then modify those contracts accordingly.
Warren, is this just for your category?
Now that could span more than mine. I'm not sure, but I just know that's an issue within my category.
And are you arbitrarily seeking to change the clauses in all of your contracts in your category, or have you done an assessment of areas where you need to do that versus others?
So we've done the complete assessment for all 13. So all of them met the basic requirements by including EP and Energy Star clauses, which were already in the FAR to begin with. What we're doing with them now is upgrading them to include the additional clauses and provisions that EPA cited.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How about to the others? Yeah, Denise, you're ready to hop in.
So David, in answer to your question, the facilities and construction does the same thing that Warren's team does. We only have 2 best-in-class solutions, and the 2 best-in-class solutions we have had all the clauses in from the base. So they were very on point with all the sustainability features. So we do one that tears buildings down, and then we do maintenance. So from the get-go, when we went through all those clauses and worked with those contracting shops, they had everything that was required by EPA and the Sustainability Office, and we worked closely with them to make sure that if anything needed to be updated or changed, because it was outdated. So ours are very much in tune with what is occurring in the sustainability area.
Mm-hmm.
And Denise, is that process manual, or are you using technology to help you?
It was manual because the contract writing systems are different, and we have 2 different agencies that have those. We don't have as many as Warren. So we had to work with each of the agencies to pull those, and it was pulling the contracts and reading them and giving them a checklist.
That's true.
Now, have you issued any of these contracts that you're editing, or is this a new thing?
What was that question, David?
Have you issued any contracts currently that have these provisions, or amended any contracts that currently enforce with these provisions?
I will say I don't know that at the agency level, but I know our best in class, we've not had to amend ours, and we had 2 that we went through.
Yeah. And then what is the current approach to compliance monitoring around those contracts?
Well, Warren can jump in, but at this point in time, the agencies that are responsible for those contracts are monitoring and handling those. So at the category level, we meet with those best-in-class contract holders. My F&C group, we meet once a month with them and discuss any issues or challenges. I don't know about the other categories, but we meet once a month with their program office and their contracting shop, just to go over everything and see if there's any issues or challenges or new opportunities or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Warren, I'm assuming that as a category manager, you guys have scorecards for your suppliers within the category, KPIs on those scorecards, and that this element is one of those elements that's being tracked from a KPI perspective?
So not yet. Bowen, you might want to respond to that one. I think we were under the impression that this was going to lead to the establishment of the KPI, specifically for sustainability, but that was going to be at the category management PMO level.
Okay.
But I will say that that initiative that Denise and Warren are speaking to, of course, when EPA approached us, they had a very, very aggressive and broad ask, which was, can we get this, make sure that we have these FAR clauses in every contract, right? And, you know, of course, we said we can, after discussion, we said, probably the best thing is to do it with the best-in-class solutions. It's, you know, you can count them on 4 different sets of hands, right? About 40 approximately. Once you move on to the second tier or tier 2, all of a sudden we're talking about thousands. And you're right, we definitely need to have some technology if we are going to kind of do that in a thorough manner. So talking with EPA and talking with Holly and Stephen Sylvan, the next step would probably be to get some select tier 2 contracts that would be large in scope, that would be able to continue to do kind of walk in the footsteps of the best-in-class solutions and ensuring, but then again, that's a manual process. We would probably want to engage with them to see if there's anything that we can do to be able to replicate that readily. Now, you mentioned technology and the other, and you mentioned KPIs, David. And for you to have a KPI, you have to be able to have data which you can measure against. And right now, the KPIs that category management is focused on are around spend under management, cost avoidance, small business utilization. Sustainability is not in that equation yet. However, one of the key elements of best-in-class solutions is that they provide transactional data. And that transactional data, we ask for 12 or 13 mandatory fields. And then they are also not mandatory, but then to the right, as many things that they want to provide. And even back in the FSSI days, the some of the solutions in industrial products and services, they actually provided, the eco label attribute for each of those items that they were selling. So we got that information for them, but we never required that. So that might be something that we are going to be able to leverage in the future to be able to let agency customers know what they're buying, as opposed to just letting them and having some numbers behind how much of what they're buying is going to be EP'd or whatever, or Energy Star. So there is opportunity to add an element of data to this sustainability equation, but I think it's going to take, EPA getting together with category management folks and saying what makes most sense for us to start tracking, and at what point do we make it mandatory to require that in the transactional data. So those are big questions all around there.
I guess what I'm curious about is so you're putting these things, I don't know, maybe I don't know what you're putting in the clauses, but if you're putting them in the clauses without the expectation of them being in compliance, and maybe you are, but somebody's got to check, right? And so that's why I'm asking, are you, and it sounds like we're in the journey, and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that that's on the list of things that we're working on. So
Boris and Mark, I see your hands up. Boris, why don't you kick it off?
Very quickly, just for clarification, I think it fits into this conversation. If Warren and Denise can kind of give the members the idea of how many agencies you're dealing with, because one of the things about scale, that you're dealing with a lot of stakeholders. So I think it will be helpful for the members to hear a ballpark how many agencies you're working with, because it's a lot. So I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, so for us, I'm assuming most of the other categories too, we work with the 24 CFO Act agencies. Most of our initiatives are across all of those agencies, so that we run the gamut of that.
Yeah. How about you, Denise?
Yeah, the 24 CFO Act agencies.
Right, so that's huge. That's like hard to even put your mind around it.
And what I'm hearing is the contract management systems are very different across these different agencies. Okay.
Yes, even within the same agency, there could be disparate contract writing systems or no contract writing systems.
Yep, that adds a whole other layer of complexity here.
Yep.
Mark.
Thanks for that, Nicole. I'm trying to get my head around this manual process in ways that we can maybe leverage some IT to help with these contracts. And obviously, if there's certain paragraphs or terms that can be added in some kind of a template form, that'd be great. But I just got back from a bar association where they use ChatGPT to write contracts. And I got to say, it's probably as good as a paralegal doing a first draft. And with an attorney's oversight, you could probably generate these contracts a lot quicker using that kind of a tool. I just wondered, has that been tried yet? I think it's a no.
Oh, no.
And Mark,
Well, yeah, I would
Mark,
say,
you know,
yeah, I would say for us, no. However, let me give you a specific example. So I think the multiple award schedules program crosses all 10 categories in some way, shape, or form. The majority of our offerings are under the multiple award schedules program. That program has an end-to-end automation system, including a writing system, where these clauses can be updated very quickly. And I'm just giving that as a broad statement to say that that particular program from end to end is automated. But however, there are other vehicles that are not as sophisticated as that.
I think that's the easy part.
Yeah.
I think the easy part is putting together the clauses. I think the more challenging part is assessing the results and monitoring compliance and putting in appropriate scorecard elements in your KPIs that track what's important for the category. Each category has a strategy, so that strategy should encompass the sustainability element. If it encompasses the sustainability element as a part of the strategy, that means you measure it. And if you measure it, then you get it. If you don't measure it, doesn't matter what you put in the contract, you're not going to get it.
Right. And I can speak for any best-in-class vehicle that's under the multiple award schedules program, because within that program there's a group of people called industrial operations analysts that actually are the compliance component for the multiple award schedules program. So they actually touch base with a lot of the contractors to ensure that they're complying with the terms and conditions of their contract. And that also would include sustainability.
Roy, I see your hand up. Why don't you jump on in?
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Troy Krebs, chair of the whole FAC, and it's great to see so many folks from GSA here today. Thank you so much for your time. I just had a point of clarification to make on the agencies you work with, just to give us an idea. A couple of you mentioned working with the 24 CFO Act agencies, but I'm just wondering, like, beyond that, do you also work with some of the smaller agencies? And, if so, kind of what might be some challenges you see there related to kind of standing up initiatives like this related to sustainability?
I would say,
Let me, Warren, why don't you go ahead and,
oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay. First, when we talk about the 24 CFO Act agencies, they're the ones that are going to be part of the CML, the CMLC of those 8 agencies. They're the ones that are governing body of category management, and the 24 CFO Act agencies are going to be the largest ones. However, when we talk about data, it encompasses the entire government. We're getting information from FPDS, and we're getting transactional data from vendors. So regardless of who is buying what, we're getting that information. They are participating. They're part of the answer, certainly. But are we working individually with the smaller agencies? No, but hopefully we're putting enough information out there on the acquisition gateway, and we'll have agency plans out there for people to read through. We'll have category plans out there for people to read through, and that we want to continue to make sure that we are transparent as possible with how the initiative is unfolding. But the work directly with smaller agencies is not happening right here.
So what you all have described is a lot of complexity. And I think it's really important that we consider that as we think about possible solutions moving forward. I'm curious about how you're thinking and what are the opportunities to streamline the process so that contract writers don't have to continually develop language around sustainability, or how do we move beyond the process that right now is inherently manual to make this easier for individuals? What opportunities do you see?
Who are you asking, Nicole?
Truthfully, I would defer to Warren, not just for his role as a category manager, but also his experience in acquisition.
Warren, why don't you jump on in, and then I think Kelly.
Oh
would
my
like to add something.
What do I well, I think it's hard because of course we've been talking about the contract writing system element of all this. But I think the streamline portion in terms of language would be that we rely totally on the FAR and the changes that happen there through the regulatory system. Also, because various agencies have different missions, there would probably be supplements to that. So each agency has its own FAR supplement. So I'm quite sure that they would adjust their supplements to extend what the FAR is saying for their particular areas. But aside from that, I think instead of solutions creating language, we let the FAR drive that. And then you think about, for your own agency supplement, what does that mean for me and my products and service and what I offer for that agency? And that way you're keeping the language consistent and concise and not and it's not becoming inconsistent across the government. So
using those specific FAR clauses to drive sustainability change within the agency.
Yeah.
Kelly, did you want to add something to this?
Sure. I mean, let's put it in the category of, I'm going to be Pollyanna here and be like, it's not so bad, we're trying. But, the category management framework is really one of the first times that has been a multi-year effort of agencies talking to each other, agencies having a contract inventory for the very first time. This did not exist before, which sounds crazy, but is real. And so the fact that there actually exists a contract inventory is, of course, also it's great, but it's also exposing lots of holes and multiple contract writing systems and all of these things that are barriers. But it's exposing all of that is also waking people up and seeing the opportunity that is missed and the opportunity that's available. And so there's an initiative, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, it's called High Def. And this is, I could pop a link in here in a little bit. But High Def is the government-wide look at what they say, it's like really accessing how you manage data, how you create tools that the workforce can use that data. And so I know that sounds very data, but it's the cousin of contract writing systems and government-wide requirements and vendor management and all of those other principles that go along with category management. So, back to my point number one, Pollyanna here, is like, this is a good thing that, this ecosystem of category management is making government-wide leadership aware of opportunities that things really should be looked at holistically and not looked at in these 24 and more independent systems that don't talk to each other or even remotely have ways to look into each other. So it's not an answer, it's not a solution, but it is a recognition of we get it, we see it, we know it needs to be worked on. Answer TBD.
I'd really like to poke a little bit more at the streamlining part, but I see David's hands up, so go ahead and jump on in, David.
I'm smiling, Kelly, because I just love your personality already. And I applaud you guys for even moving to category management. I've been a category manager from top to bottom for 30 years. So the fact that you've been at it 9, you're still in your infancy. I know that you guys have stuff that you're working on. But let me just make sure I understand their setup, because I want to, and this is a little bit of a backup for me. Does each category have a strategy that is aligned by strategy and then agency? And then if so, are there corresponding contract templates that support varying categories with varying agencies? Or is it just one set template across the board? How's that set up for you in terms of the contract templates? Because this should not be something that you have to figure out in every deal. Like that's got to already be in place.
So I wanted to give Warren the opportunity. He's got a commitment in a little bit, so I wanted to give him the opportunity, maybe answer that question and offer some closing thoughts before he drops to his next commitment. Busy
I was
guy.
gonna, and on this, before I answer, I was gonna defer to Bowen because that's coming more top down from the PMO's office. So
Okay.
I don't know, Bowen, if you wanna speak to any of that first.
So truth
Okay.
is, we do, as I think Nicole had mentioned, we're kind of conveners, and the normalization or the standardization of any language, and I think we're not really involved with those imperatives.
Okay.
Truth is, I think at this point, we're really relying on and trying to see, and if there are best practices within categories, we definitely want to be able to share those out among the categories themselves first. But hopefully we're making some small little changes and repositioning that ship a little bit so that we can do them smarter as we move forward for the whole of government.
Anne,
Anne, did you want to go? Oh, okay, sorry. I saw Anne's hand up too. Okay.
Oh, I was just asking if your category management plans for FY24 will have elements around sustainability.
We probably
depends
still,
on the category.
yeah, I think for ours, we will, only because the effort that we've been working on in 23 is going to spill over for us into 24. But this conversation has given us, or given me anyway, some other aspects to think about with regard to sustainability, and maybe I can work those into our strategy for 24.
Oh,
But
sure.
yes, certainly. Yep.
But how about you, Denise? Thanks, Warren.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it has sustainability. As I said, the requirements document, we're going to look and see if we actually want to create some kind of government solution for that, and researching with the agency. So building upon that, a lot going on with EV and charging stations and things of that nature. So
Sure.
we have, and we're working on that now. And then anything that an agency may come up with, you know, GSA does a lot of different things with border protection and the walls and stuff like that. So
Sure.
there will be sustainability.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm curious, you know, Bowen, you said you're convener, and Warren, you indicated that a lot of left to different organizations to figure out. I from where I sit, like, you have a ton of expertise here, like a ton of expertise. And whether things are happening or not, what sort of opportunities are you seeing to streamline? Whether it's happening at this moment, whether it may happen in the future, just as you scan the horizon, what are you seeing as a pain point that could be remedied?
So I do think that Kelly had touched upon that high def initiative, and I think that actually is going to pay off in spades as it gets as it takes shape. That is actually, you know, that's going to answer questions that we don't even have right now, because we have access to the data then at that point.
The data.
Shareable. Yeah.
So it's interesting. In one of our last discussions, we heard about how there's a real data problem across the different agencies. It's collected differently. It's not standardized. So it makes comparison very, very difficult. It means that agencies, each of the agencies agree that there's a problem, or at least implicitly agree, but there's no centralizing force right now to move a conversation forward towards standardization. In its role as a convener, do you believe that GSA may be a logical place for that conversation to begin?
So I'll jump in here. I don't know if I have an opinion about if GSA should be the convener. I think that probably that concept needs to be tackled at above a common spend level, even, because it's really bigger than common spend. It's spend. So I think, you know, obviously category managers have the expertise of really being able to drill into specific areas, and just by virtue of their expertise and their access, they get a lot of useful ammo in terms of best practices and what you see across agencies. I mean, you know, Denise and Warren, you guys see what agencies do that no other agency gets to see just by virtue of where you sit. So I think that we category management can play a role in that, but I don't know if we should be the driver of it, or it should be at a higher level. I mean, you guys might have different opinions, but that's sort of where I net out.
That makes sense. Let me move on. And Anne, I also want to bring you in here with respect to our questions. I'm conscious of time. And so I think we're going to have to redirect and ask ourselves what some of the priority questions are. You've talked about embedding the FAR clauses into the different category management processes. What are your thoughts on requiring them in the RFP writing processes? And specifically, have you thought about embedding them into the templates that are being used to develop different RFPs? Have you gone that far down the road? No pun intended.
Well, I would say and I can't speak for, because I'm more GSA leaning, of course, but I can't speak for SOUP or NITAC or Army Chest, which are under our portfolio as well. But I would say that for, and me having been in operations and been over operations, that a lot of our templates and checklists always included the terms and conditions within the solicitations that were required. So a lot of that is reinforced through those checklists to the acquisition workforce, so that they don't, forget to include the necessary clauses or provisions for. So I would say that our contracting shops are very vigilant in doing that. And so just to ensure that it tracks back to the solicitation or the contract that it's coming from. But yes.
I'd like to kick this up to a higher level. Are you aware of any efforts outside of the US? So for instance, the Crown Commercial Service in the UK, or the EU's efforts to prioritize sustainability through category management? And if you are, what's standing out to you that you're doing that you think might be useful here?
I wasn't aware of those.
And if you're not, that's fine. That's fine.
So Nicole, I'm going to jump in here. I have started researching that because it did come up in the European countries, and we try to bring, as a convener, that information forward. I've just started researching it. I can't really comment on it, but I did see that they have specific requirements that they provide that are required. And I'm researching it to see if at the facilities and construction level it's something we should pursue or bring up as a best practice and have the agencies look at. But I don't know enough about it and haven't done enough research to intelligently provide that, because it is very overwhelming in looking at everything that they have done at this point in time.
I understand. Anne, did you want to follow up on that one?
No, I mean, I think it sums it up. If you haven't, if you're not aware of anything Crown Commercial Services doing at this point, they were sort of, when we started category management, they were a couple years ahead of us. And so that's why I figured they might have made some progress in this area. So, but I'm glad you're looking at it, Kelly.
I want to ask our panel here, because I think, Boris, we were supposed to wrap up this part of our actually we have 15 more minutes. Terrific. I just circled back around on the agenda. I'd like to shift gears a little bit to talk a bit more about AI and technology. I am taking to heart this notion that there's a lot of variability across the different agencies and how they are embedding technology into the contract writing process. I am wondering, from your point of view, what value certain technologies that are out there, such as AI, what value you see in the current landscape, and how it might be leveraged to make the process of embedding sustainability into federal acquisition easier.
So Nicole, I once again, I think if I know that Denise and Warren have to drop off, and I probably have to drop off in a few minutes here as well. But AI and is going to be part and parcel, I guess, of our workload somehow, some way. We have to be able to govern it, its use. But it certainly is a really good level setter for, and I think I forget who mentioned it before, that getting it can do the work of at least a paralegal perhaps in generating a document that someone can actually go in and fine tune. Okay, so certainly I guess it has legs, and to be able to do that in a contract situation as well, contract writing situation. But for us to, I think for the category management, we really haven't considered, delving deep into that and trying to make that put as a front burner type of issue for us. We are still kind of getting the categories to get their heads around initiatives that are at the fore for their individual categories as well as for us. And I think Anne had asked, do we have sustainability initiatives across the categories? And we actually do track, of course, and we encourage the categories to have initiatives around a handful of different administration priorities, including sustainability, supply chain resiliency, equity, and acquisitions. So there's a lot to kind of ask of the categories. Go ahead.
I was just going to take a step backwards a little bit and ask, are these technologies being used other ways in category management? So is AI presently being used in other ways outside of sustainability for category management?
No, I don't believe we are, except for perhaps some language recognition in terms of being able to ensure that we are, aligning some of the data correctly when we're getting information about the description of a product, and that's all we've got. We do that, as I believe, in our data shop, but really nothing as evolved as using AI to help us craft the words that might engender the policy that we're trying to support.
And you're off mute. Did you want to jump in?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thank you.
All right. All right. So we know that EPA is advocating and prioritizing the most frequently used contract writing systems and updating them to automate the addition of sustainable procurement clauses in RFPs. What are your thoughts on this?
So I'll be honest, I'm neutral on this. I have not spoken about that with Holly or Stephen, actually. Okay. Probably more directed towards making sure that we are meeting the mail on the President's Management Agenda milestone. But if you ask me, what my thought might be if they're pushing that, I think that would be great. I think that we want to try to continue to have, for better term, a template, common language. Of course, these are some concepts that would work well regardless. But now that we have AI, it's on steroids, kind of, about being able to get that out there.
The other thing that came up as we were talking with EPA, Holly specifically, was that we learned that GSA had created an application program interface, an API, that would facilitate automation, but the API would need updating and pilot testing. Do you have any thoughts on how this might be used? Well, first, are you familiar with this? And then what are your thoughts on using the API to accelerate sustainability in the acquisition process?
So I am not familiar with that API. My best guess would be that if it's within GSA, I think Clifton Best might be involved with that.
Clifton Best?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I just have Anne, did you want to jump in?
I was just, are you just aware of any kind of small pilots or interesting initiatives underway where technology is used out in an agency to further sustainable outcomes?
Let me tell you,
Whether-
we've asked these categories to kind of keep their ear to the ground
Yeah.
for those types of things. We continue to encourage them to share with us any emerging best practices that they
Right.
think are out there. At this point, nothing, that we could probably hold on to with two hands.
Yeah, if it's there, it's hidden.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we just have a couple of quick final questions related to technology, Bowen, that I'm hoping you can weigh in on. Has your team ever worked with an agency project related to using modern digital tools to drive sustainability or other socioeconomic outcomes like small business, minority-owned business? And what does that look like, if so?
So on the agency side, Kelly probably could answer that better if there's anything with an agency side. I don't know if she's still on or not.
I don't see her here.
Okay. But on the category side where I am, then once again, I don't think that we haven't had that discussion among my Denise and Warren and the other category managers or their deputies.
Okay. And then our last question, do you have any other ideas on how we might be able to leverage technology to help the acquisition workforce drive more sustainable outcomes? We talked about the category management side, and now we've pivoted a little bit more directly towards technology.
Yeah, so on the technology side, I definitely think that, one thing I do know is that AI is going to impact this. We need to probably get out there and start testing the waters of what works, and also not just what works, but what is the right thing to do for the government as a whole, and put some ground rules around how we're going to use that. That's a brave new world, I think.
Same for professors.
Yeah.
We've got our hands full too.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Bowen, about what you see from your end of the world and the possibilities related to sustainability within GSA?
So I've learned more about sustainability these last 12 to 18 months working with Holly and Stephen and their team. Right now, we've been responding to issues and using the category management framework to be able to get answers. They've come to us, or EPA has come to us before saying, hey, which of your solutions that are best in class are complying with the hydrofluorocarbon or greenhouse gas emissions requirements. And, we go back out and talk about that. And we're also, as Denise mentioned, there's a lot of talk about the emerging place for zero emission vehicles. So piece by piece, we're getting more involved with them. But the nexus of using technology to kind of answer that, I don't know if we have a game plan around that specifically.
And I think that's one of the challenges for our subcommittee is we're trying to look more broadly at the big opportunities that are out there that could be pursued in order to make substantive change. I'd like to open it up to the rest of the subcommittee to ask if there are any final questions for Bowen. He's been really generous with his time.
None from me, Nicole. Thank you.
Great.
I'm good.
All right. Luke, were there any questions that you wanted to ask? Mark?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Nicole.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just as always to ask if there are other interesting speakers that you think we ought to hear from, please let us know. We're always.
I definitely will. I'll coordinate that with Boris if that makes sense for me to do it that way.
And you mentioned Clifton Best, definitely on my radar.
Okay, yeah, he definitely should have some thoughts about that, certainly.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you,
both.
Bowen.
No, thank you
great to
very
talk
much
to
for
you.
having me, and I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad that, you know, we'll be able to get and actually kind of show off a couple of the categories that we've got that actually are making category management, giving them a good,
Amazing work.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I know you all need to convene yourselves here, so appreciate it. If there's anything else, Boris, please feel free to reach back out to me.
Will do. Thank you so much, Bowen. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
All right.
So I popped into the chat our Jamboard. I'm just curious from the subcommittee what some of your big takeaways are. We can, and I see Anne, you've joined the Jamboard. Make sure you're able to get in. We want to capture your thoughts here on what the big takeaways are that you saw or that you heard from today's conversation.
Can't talk.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Nope, has to be in a sticky note.
I
Well,
won't do it.
ultimately, I do want it there because that's where we capture our conversations.
Yeah, I can type if you want.
But go ahead, David.
I know that I missed something. This is not so much for the Jamboard, but I had an occasion to miss a few meetings. I've been traveling and working and so forth. This retirement thing's becoming a job. But how did we get down the path of technology as it relates to this? When did that happen?
Yeah, so this is priority 2. How do we make this drop dead easy for the acquisition workforce? And technology very early on was a lever that could be pulled to automate the process to make this drop dead easy. But as we know, David, as you know, technology also presents pain points for the acquisition workforce. And so our task is to think through what those opportunities look like and ways in which we could make this win-win all the way around. And so admittedly, I would say that the last several weeks, we've been poking at this, not entirely sure where it's going to take us, but we're hearing different stories from different groups of individuals that are part of the acquisition lifecycle to help us think about this. But admittedly, along the way, I think we're learning more about the broader complexity associated with this. So what really stuck out to me today was this notion that the contract writing software is different across all these different agencies. There's no standardization, there's nothing uniform here. So a lot of what's out there is done manually. And what it means is that it makes it more difficult to just reach out to a technology solution. You would be looking at refashioning the entire system for some of these agencies.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Sort of, I think as we're thinking about recommendations that we need to also consider the bite size. Like, I just think that where the realm we're delving in right now is, even if it wasn't the federal government, let's say it was the city of Seattle or King County, and we were talking about a technology implementation, we'd have to have so many more stakeholders at the table that we don't probably have the time or bandwidth to even deal with. So that was going to be my comment, is that I just think that we need to revisit our bite size with respect to the recommendations that we're looking to make.
And I think that makes sense, David. I don't think it means we should shy away from the big conversation, because I think part of that conversation is going to require someone initiating it. And so as a recommendation, we can suggest what that might look like. But I agree that these are going to be multi-year processes to figure out, and certainly not bite-sized. So we need to think about both quick wins, because at the end of the day, we want to start making change right away, but also recognizing that there are thorny issues that are going to have to be addressed, that are going to be bigger in order to enable more of these bite-sized opportunities to be realized. But I think that we're going to need both, and we shouldn't forget about the quick wins.
Yeah, I'm specifically talking about the technology thing, but okay. And then I'm going to shut up after this. Then maybe this gets captured on the jam board or not, but I lost my thought. It'll come back to me. I'm an aging man.
David, we're all aging.
I think the conversation around technology, I'm going back here because it was months ago, but I think, when we were talking about workforce, how to help the workforce, it just was around the spirit of like, there has to be automation and integration that can help like that. Those pieces have to be tools that we can give the workforce, but I'm 100% agreement, like coming up with some proposal recommending like a new technology you roll out across the federal government. No, it's not going to happen. I think we were a little motivated and inspired by some of the pilots that we got a little inkling of, and some of our speakers from EPA around working with Prism, a company, to see if within, certain customer sets, certain agencies where they did have the same system, they could pre-populate with some standard sustainability language, and just sort of finding these pilots where we can encourage them to look into it further and see if they could expand it.
And the hope is that we bring those folks into the next public meeting. So the Prism folks from Prism, NASA has been running pilots, and then the other one I think was DOE. They had a contract writing system that had embedded AI within it, and they were going to talk with us about what that pilot looked like. Troy, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. Just to reinforce, coincidentally, for my day job, I was up on the Hill today catching up with some staff who do government management issues. And I think that there's so much interest in AI and how it can be used. On the other hand, I think there's concern about like, how do you put guardrails around it? So I just wanted to chime in here to reinforce the support for like trying to come up with like a pilot type solution, because I think there's so many lessons to be learned, and that everyone needs to tread very carefully here. And there's going to be a lot going on, probably legislatively and administratively to put parameters around all of this. So this is something we've been talking about for, at least a couple of decades with acquisition of how to use technology tools to kind of, write as much as you can for the contracting community and make it easier for them. AI is just taking it to a whole new level. And so I think that we could be really constructive in learning and proposing some pilots that can kind of speak to the potential of that, recognizing that there's probably still going to be kind of a regulatory overlay as far as government use of tools like that.
Go ahead, David.
So one of the takeaways for me was that this is not new, by the way. I kind of knew this for a while, but it was reinforced today, and that is that the GSA across the agencies exude multiple cultures. There's not the same culture from agency to agency. I'm sure many folks would agree with that. So the question becomes, how can we influence the one culture, which is the acquisition workforce culture, right? So from a bite-sized perspective, what I am not capable, but I don't think we're capable of doing, is influencing the various cultures across all of GSA and the various departments and all of that. But I do think we might be able to create sort of a cultural initiative within the acquisition workforce. And I just think we need to start thinking about sort of what this subcommittee is entitled, which is the Acquisition Workforce Subcommittee, right? It's not, while I agree that technology is needed, we're not the technology committee or subcommittee, right? So that workforce, there are some consistencies that could be garnered across the acquisition workforce that may vary from throughout those various agencies, but it accomplishes the same thing, like creating an environment in the workforce where there's a sustainability supplier assessment. That lets suppliers know that the federal government is serious about sustainability, and it starts to help them get their eggs in order. Now, some organizations are already working through this, but and the other term that's thrown around a lot is best in class or best practice. And I'm always questioning, like, to who? Like, who said it was, right? And so there are some companies out there having real success that they haven't measured through KPIs that say, yeah, not only did we do these things, these are the results of the work that we did. And for me, that's best in class. Like having when you can actually talk about it and have results to show, then you're really getting into something that's best in class, right? So many of those organizations, as an example, are in fact moving to assessing their supplier base. There's the assess me first, how am I doing? And then assess my tier one and make sure that that assessment is going through to all of the various tiers in my supply chain that affects me. Because here's the thing about sustainability. It's not going to happen necessarily at a tier one supplier. If you're buying one item from a tier one supplier and it's made up of products or raw material from tier two, tier three, those are going to affect the outcomes, right? So somehow you have to play it into the supply chain. And I think building a culture within acquisition that starts to force that behavior, be it through assessments or whatever else we want to call it, begins to really start to build a culture of, okay, now we've got the acquisition folks constantly, and every time we talk to them, all of them, it doesn't matter where they're coming from, what agency they're supporting or whatever, are talking about this sustainability assessment or talking about this related to sustainability. So from a workforce standpoint, I feel like that's an area we should explore.
How do I capture that in a sticky? David, help me out.
You didn't get that? You didn't get that? Let's explore. The way I would say it, Nicole, is let's exploring cultural where we can influence culture. The culture of the acquisition workforce is really it should be an area of focus, right? And how do you change cultures? Well, leaders change cultures by asking questions, right? If I'm a low-level employee or a category manager and I'm taking something up the chain, the questions that my boss asks are going to determine what I incorporated in this time, next time, and every time. Yeah. Right? That's how you start to influence culture. So the organizations that are winning or changing their culture, they're investing in technology as needed, and they're investing in process as needed, but the need is being driven by the cultural change.
Yep.
And that's what I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of.
Yep, I've captured that. I want to give just a few more minutes to folks here. We have some stickies that are coming up, but I want to give more time to, and it looks like Anne needs to drop off, and she's gone. So I'll circle back around with her on Friday. So let's just take a few more minutes. And it doesn't, in populating these stickies, it need not just be about solutions. Let's also characterize the big themes that we saw here. So as we consider solutions, we are able to keep it nested within the reality facing the federal acquisition workforce. So one of the things that I heard, for instance, was the complexity of this process. So anything, whether it's solutions, pain points, things to keep in mind as we move to solutions, let's just take a few more minutes to just brainstorm the hell out of this Jamboard to get as much here as possible, because we heard a lot. What I want to be able to capture is what stuck out for you.
Hey, David, if you come up with some, you can send a chat to me and I can put it on a sticky. If anything else you want to add, David, I'd be glad to do that.
I've talked too much.
Okay. Anything else you want to add? I'd be glad to convert that into a sticky.
Yeah, Boris, I think I'm signed in the wrong way to join, but I might just chat you a couple things.
Yeah, chat me and I'll be glad to add them. Yeah, and as you're typing, I have some thoughts, David, as you were talking. I think the culture point is an important one, but it's also an opportunity at GSA that we can influence a lot of players. The category is a great example. I'll give you an example like hybrid work. So we've been connecting with OMB and other agencies right now on the best practices that GSA is doing for hybrid work. So other agencies are now looking at our agency to see what they can learn and apply as we look at the future of work. And that's one thing. The thing that's compelling is every agency, you're right, has their own systems, their own way of doing things. And category management has been a massive leap forward in eliminating just a lot of things that were kind of duplicative. And now it's really built a structure that really helps the federal government synchronize requirements and trying to not duplicate. I remember I worked for the Army before GSA, and that's something we were trying to do with the IT business, just trying to consolidate within just one organization. But yeah, so I think that is a good point, but I feel like we're in the right place to influence a lot of things, just even with category management, nothing else. Just a couple of thoughts. And we are doing. And that's the thing, that this committee has already put things forward that are definitely going to have an impact beyond just GSA.
One of the things that impressed upon me was just the general level of openness from the speakers today. That it's really clear that they are eager to consider the topic and to figure out what the right pathway is forward. So oftentimes we'll hear reluctance or caution, and while I think they're looking for practical solutions, on balance, what I heard was a very open response to recognizing the importance of this and figuring out a way to make it happen. One thing I'd like to get your reactions to, I heard that they're already looking at how to embed the FAR clauses into contract management. Those conversations are moving forward. What I heard was that they're starting with the best in class, which is exactly what EPA recommended, but that the second tier assessment is going to be a little bit trickier, and that technologies would really lend themselves towards that second tier assessment just because of the difficulties associated with it.
And I picked up on Warren talking about they're watching the FAR case, the FAR rules very closely, because once those, but you know, the rulemaking process just takes a while. But they are looking at those to see how they might impact their just the requirements, you know, the terms and conditions and all of that, different clauses they put in.
David, I really appreciated your focus on the scorecards and KPIs. What I heard Warren say was that sustainability could lead to a KPI, but they're not there yet. Do you recall what the sticking point was on that? Was that a data problem?
Yeah, it seemed like I heard something along those lines, which prompted me to put in the Coopify link, because I know that City of Pittsburgh, as an example, used them to do a data assessment of organizations and their sustainability practices. So that was one thing. I also didn't hear a particular priority around it, and I just look. I'm probably a little prickly around compliance, because we've been in this game around equity for decades, and I think we've failed in many aspects of that, right? And it's because we haven't really been diligent about compliance monitoring and then taking action based on outcomes and the lack of results. So putting clauses in that nobody's going to actually be held accountable for just doesn't seem like a valuable waste of time, valuable use of time.
That is actually something that also came up in the EPA conversation, that they said that there's that currently the mechanism to circle back around and close that loop related to compliance is proving trickier. And so
that's why I was asking Warren about the category strategy, because compliance monitoring is going to be different by category. Some will be easier than others in terms of being able to determine whether or not a supplier is living up to whatever the standard is. But you're not going to have a set of KPIs for sustainability that fits all categories. Each category should have a strategy. Within that strategy should be elements around supply resiliency and supply continuity, equity, social justice, sustainability, all those things. And those elements should be a part of the KPI, part of the scorecard, but those are specific to the category, right? So that's where they're going to need to go. If you try to impose some sort of KPI that's across the board, you're going to get something that, one, is not meaningful in terms of the outcomes around sustainability, but it's not going to be meaningful for the suppliers either. So it has to be specific to the category and that particular strategy within a category. Even in something like technology, for example, what you're looking for in terms of sustainability for hardware purchases are very different than what you might be looking for from a SaaS provider, right? So those elements have to be incorporated in the deal, in the contract, and then they have to be incorporated. The way you're going to track and measure it has to be incorporated in the scorecard.
So this is a question to everyone here because I've got parts of it in my notes, but there was a bit that was fuzzy to me, and we moved on, so I wasn't able to follow up. So Warren said KPIs require data to measure against, and sustainability isn't presently in the current equation. He said that sustainability creates the opportunity to provide transactional data, and they currently require 12 to 13 mandatory fields. But then he went on to talk about eco-label attributes, and then I heard him say it's not required. So what I couldn't figure out is what's required and what's the part that presently hasn't been required.
Yeah, the fact that you can't figure that out makes my point.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's
That-
easy for me to say I didn't figure it out because I'm stepping at it from the outside. So I'm asking you all.
Yeah,
So
That-
Boris, please.
that might be a good follow-up for Bowen and Warren, so we can definitely shoot an email. And just to ask that question, Hank, if you don't mind putting that on an email, and I can follow up with them because I kind of remember hearing bits and pieces of that. I know that it's on the radar. I know they're looking at, is there a KPI for sustainability that we can look at the enterprise level? So it's on the radar. That's something that's under discussion. But there hasn't been a decision. And because the executive order is definitely driving a lot of actions, both at the enterprise level and then for each category. But let's follow up with Warren and Bowen. Yeah.
Let's also ask for their current scorecard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be
what are
good.
they using
What
for
they're
their
actually
current
measuring. Mhm.
Yeah, let's take a look at that and then see what. And I'd also be interested in what they're looking to augment those scorecards with from a sustainability standpoint. What would they be incorporating in them to address the sustainability piece?
Yeah,
because look, here's the thing. Like, they don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There are some folks doing this, right?
right.
So I just popped into the notes into the chat what my notes are, and what's there is not consistent with itself, and so it would be terrific if we could follow up on this. And
Yeah, that sounds good.
And Boris, is this something that I would follow up on? Is that something that your team would follow up on? What's the best mechanism here?
You can definitely follow up with them directly. Absolutely.
And so the question also relates, so David, your follow-up on this specifically was on the KPI, or no, the scorecard.
Yeah.
And the
Let's
question.
see what they're currently doing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Well, one other thing I was going to respond to, David, we were talking about compliance and how they're doing it. So Warren talked about the MAS program, the multiple award schedules. So the multiple award schedules, which GSA manages, I worked in the MAS program years ago. It hits all the 10 categories, and this is more of the common products and services that agencies purchase, sort of like the Amazon or the Walmart, if you will.
MRO, yeah.
So they have, the multiple award schedules program has an organization called supplier management, and they have industrial operation analysts that actually go in the field and talk to vendors, make sure that they're complying with the terms of contracts, and sustainability is an element. It's interesting to know how much sustainability is an element in the multiple award schedules program, but they have a structure in place to actually do surveillance and make sure that contractors are complying with what they're supposed to be complying for MAS. So there is that element now, and it's pretty robust. It's been around for, I don't know how long, but it's been years.
Well, that's kind of my point, Boris. They should be using scorecards when they're going out there to measure those things. So if we get a look at that, we might get a sense for what they're counting, what they're doing today. And maybe they've made some advancements in terms of including some of the sustainability elements. If they haven't, we have an opportunity there to help them offer some KPIs they may want to think about, because again, this is not new. So, well, it's kind of new. People are in varying places in their journey, and there are some folks that are a little more advanced than maybe these guys are. So,
Right.
So I don't see
Oh,
Troy,
yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm gonna put the link in the chat to like the public link of the GSA scorecards so that people can take a look.
thank you, Troy. So the Jamboard slowed down. I think we've probably covered the important high points that we were hearing from the group. It was helpful. I think that really for me, what it impressed upon me was the level of complexity here. There is great opportunity that exists, but we're functioning within a highly complex system. And to the extent that we can rely on existing pathways to create change, that's most likely going to be those quick levers that we can pull in order to focus on sustainability. I don't see members of the public with us here today, so I don't. We need to pause. I want to get on everyone's radar. Our next meeting is September 12th, and Otto Hansen will be joining us from Term Scout. And Term Scout is a technology company that is taking contract clauses and automating them, but doing them in a very interesting way. They're crowdsourcing this so that using machine learning, the contract writing system can update itself in real time. Really, this is a level setting opportunity to understand what's possible. But I think today's part of this journey is also realizing that what's possible may not be possible within this setting, but it can give us a glimpse of what we might be able to work toward. Is there anything else anyone wants to say about today or where we're headed? Our next public meeting will be looking at pilot opportunities that have emerged across within the PRISM system and then across other agencies as well. Actually, every one of the speakers will be coming from a different agency. Boris, do you have an update on where we are with arranging those speakers?
So we have reached out to a couple of them. So we have a couple of interested folks. And actually Stephanie was taking the lead on that. She's out this week. And I think just to make sure I'm clear, we're looking for some industry perspective, right? Trying to bring industry-minded people, folks in the industry kind of to speak on that perspective as well, correct?
So yes, and that is sometime in October is when we're looking at the
okay, that's for the one for industries in October. And then the next one you're looking at is for contract writing systems, correct?
Yes. So
okay.
It's the DoD PRISM Users Group.
Okay.
It is NASA that has run a test using SAS. I think it's SAP systems. And then the third one related to DOE, which it was I don't think it was DOE check. It was some sort of API that they were using in order to integrate their different systems. The idea was that this was going to reduce let me rephrase that. It was going to automate the process internal and thinking about whether and to what extent, well, first learning how these pilot tests, how these pilot projects have worked. As for ourselves, do we see applicability in this space so we can imagine whether there are next steps associated with this?
Okay. I will be checking with Stephanie, see where we are, and definitely get back with you on both. On both. I know we have a couple of fillers out there for both of those.
That sounds great. Okay, everyone, let me open it up to the floor. David, Mark, Troy, do you have any last thoughts on today's session or where we are moving forward?
Yeah, thanks. I thought it was a really good discussion. And I think just hearing about where category management is and potentially where they could go is like a really great way to think about tying in sustainability, because as we've talked about, it seems like it's going to be different across the categories. So Good to take the segmented approach as to what's appropriate.
I also see real opportunities with category management because of the role that they're taking as conveners and educators and collaborators to be an important hub to help shift the culture internally. And how that takes place, I think that's up to us to think creatively about the different suggestions that we're hearing about. But I think that there's a real opportunity here to leverage this moving forward. All right, everyone. Thank you.
All righty. I appreciate everybody joining in today. So a lot more discovery work happened today, and we'll definitely stay in touch with the folks that we talked to today. And we'll just go ahead and adjourn our meeting so we can stop the recording.